Production of Kansas City Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Coming up, shaking things up all over the region as you head to the polls. We dissect your choices and ask what's next. Plus, could curbing Kansas City tax incentives be on a ballot near you soon? In Johnson County, why one city is taking Deffenbaugh out with the trash. And just like garbage, why is Kemper being tossed out as the venue gets a new name? Hello, I'm Nick Haynes, and welcome to another edition of Kansas City Week in Review, dissecting the news this week. He is the host of Up to Date on KCUR-FM, Steve Kraske. From the Business and Development Desk at the Kansas City Star, Steve Vockrodt. The senior writer for The Call newspaper, Eric Wesson. And star reporter, columnist and blogger, Dave Helling. Some people said they were turned off by his commercials, where he creates an explosion after shooting off his assault rifle. But a former Navy SEAL who has never held elected office before is now one step closer to earning the keys to the Missouri governor's mansion. Eric Greitens winning the crowded Republican primary Tuesday.
You know, just the other day, I had a woman who came up to me, and she said, Eric, she said, I am a liberal. She said, I have never once in my life voted for a Republican. She said, you're different, and today I cast my first ever vote for a Republican. Now, this clearly pained her a little. And so I just put my hand on her shoulder and I said, thanks, Mom.
All the more remarkably, Greitens wins after being blasted for being formerly a Democrat who applauded for Barack Obama at the 2008 convention. What was the secret to his success this week, Steve?
Eric Greitens is an outsider, Nick. You saw in that clip there that he wasn't wearing even a tie. Another sign to the public that this is somebody different, somebody out of the box a little bit. This is shaping up as the year of the outsider. Donald Trump's candidacy a case in point. Tim Huelskamp losing out in western Kansas to an outsider. We're seeing this trend over and over and over again in our politics right now. Eric Greitens is a new kind of candidate. We'll see how he does in the fall.
But there were people with far more name recognition than him in this race. People like Peter Kinder and Catherine Hanaway, who had been a Speaker of the House, Steve.
Right, which goes even further to underscore Steve's point, which I agree with. And also, let's not forget that Eric Greitens had quite a bit of money, a lot of it coming from out state, but he that money allowed him to run a ground game that got him over the top from these more established brand name politicians.
Now, the Democrat turned Republican faces a Republican turned Democrat this fall, Attorney General Chris Koster, who also has masses of money on hand. But Eric Greitens showed in this campaign that he too could attract large amounts of campaign cash. What type of governor would each of these individuals be, Dave?
Well, I think we have a good sense of Chris Koster. He's sort of a law and order guy, but he also wants to protect labor unions. He would veto any right to work legislation, for example, and would be more of a, let's spend money on education, transportation than maybe Eric Greitens would be. But they're both very similar in terms of their charisma, their ability to communicate with the public. And Nick, both of them will have oodles of cash going into the fall election. Not only the money they can raise on their own, but Missouri is one of the few competitive governor races in the country in 2016. And so the Republican Governors Association, the Democratic Governors Association, put out news releases within about 10 minutes of the results being final on Tuesday. They're going to spend millions in Missouri to try and affect the outcome in this race. So Missourians had better get ready for more ads of machine guns and explosions and all the things that both the candidates
because
are going
both
to talk about.
are also very favorable to guns, aren't they, Eric?
I think Greitens' bump came with the commercial that Barack Obama was the worst president of his lifetime and possibly ever. I think that tying candidates to President Obama gives people that boost that they need in that party. But let me say this.
But if that was the case, though, why wouldn't John Bruner's ad then saying, hey, that Greitens stood up for Barack Obama at the 2008 convention actually cost Eric Greitens the election?
And He did, but he didn't do it with the same charisma and popularity that Greitens got on when he actually said those words. I think the clip that you're talking about was just a news clip of it, and they showed him in the crowd, which could have been at anything. But let me just say this. The Democrats have a very serious problem with coming into this election statewide. Number one, if you look at the polls and the numbers, Republicans outvoted Democrats 2-1 in every category. And when you get to it, I think Robin Smith, the first African-American woman to ever get nominated for a statewide seat, she got more votes than Kander and Koster and everybody else that ran on that ticket. So Democrats better figure out a way to get their base out to the polls in November, or Missouri is going to be a completely red state.
Well, let's talk about getting your base out. In Kansas, Tuesday was considered by some to be a referendum on Kansas Governor Sam Brownback, even though he was not on the ballot. In almost all of the local races where a moderate Republican was targeting a conservative incumbent state lawmaker, the moderate won. Even more remarkably, this happened with pretty low turnout, which traditionally favors conservatives. A little less than 20% of Johnson County voters went to the polls, only a small uptick on 2 years ago. So what accounts for this political shift that seems to go against political convention, Steve?
Well, I think you had a lot of grassroots activity in Kansas this last couple months, working to get pro-education voters to the polls. The energy was on that side of the equation this time. In recent elections, the energy has been on the other side, Nick, with the conservatives. And, Governor Brownback's numbers, he wasn't on the ballot this time. He has the lowest job approval numbers, lowest job satisfaction numbers in the country. and that says something. Clearly, the state was stating a message here, because Governor Brownback's policies didn't fare well anywhere across the state.
Now, Governor Brownback's chief spokesperson blamed Tuesday's results, Steve Ockrott, on an anti-incumbency sentiment. Is that what happened?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's a little shallow to just say it's an anti-incumbency thing broadly. I mean, it's the incumbents who are supporting policies that have become unpopular because the evidence is fairly widespread at this point about the efficacy of those policies. And the other thing too is some of these incumbents who lost were noticeably absent from a lot of forums, from a lot of debates. And, people in local chambers of commerce and city councils complain to me that some of these incumbents, they never hear from them, they never see them. And I think that's, a dynamic that's not going to be helpful for candidates going forward.
Now, while the moderates were celebrating, probably still have hangovers from all of the champagne this Friday, but you are throwing ice-cold water on a lot of that jubilation this week in a column, Dave Helling, saying if you think these moderates have an easy journey as they go to Topeka, think again. It's not going to be easy pumping millions of dollars into schools and rolling back those Brownback tax cuts.
Right. I am the ice-cold water reporter, I think you know, okay, so that's my job. But I think what I was trying to point out in that story, based on conversations with lots of people, Republicans and Democrats, is a lot of what happens next year will depend on Governor Brownback. Will he come to the table? Will he discuss changes in his tax policy, changes in the way school money is raised and spent? Or will he stick his feet in the concrete, refuse to budge? If he does that, then I think, and most Republicans think he will, by the way, then I think you've got 2 years of stalemate, argument, vetoes, scraping by. Some bills pass, some bills don't. And it really will then depend on who is elected governor in 2018. But there is a chance, a small one, but there is a chance Governor Brownback could look at the results and say, in essence, you know what, the voters were saying something, that it's time for a new look at what I've done over the last 6 years, and therefore I can and will sit down with the moderates and the Democrats to try and reach some accommodation.
Steve.
It just strikes me as such an interesting moment in Kansas right now, Nick. Traditionally, Kansas has been, it's kind of a moderate Republican state. It's the Republican Party of Bob Dole, of Nancy Kassebaum, of Elf Landing going back to the 1930s. And what we've seen the last 6 or 8 years under Governor Brownback has been something different, kind of an aberration. And I think the question right now is, and to Dave's point, given the struggles that are going to lie ahead here, will the state, sort of swing back to its more liberal, moderate Republican roots, or will it again swing back conservative? Interesting times.
It could be the party of Chris Kobach and Sam Brownback.
It could be. The thing I'm already anticipating is the 2018 elections, which will be a midterm election. And in Kansas, 2018 midterm elections have favored conservatives, and so does the pendulum switch back to that side in 2 years.
And a lot of that will, I think, depend on the last 2 years, and it may be that Governor Brownback will think about that and make some decisions based on not only the Republican brand in state house races, but the Republican brand for governor. If the next 2 years are stalemate, that I think would arguably put the Republican gubernatorial nominee at some disadvantage in 2018, and that may be a part of his calculus, Brownback's calculus, for the last 2 years.
Something remarkably rare happened in Kansas this week. Also, a congressman was ousted from office for only the 4th time this year anywhere in the country. A sitting congressman fails to win his party's nomination for re-election. Tim Huelskamp, who had been a Tea Party favorite, was ousted by Roger Marshall, an obstetrician who'd never held elected office before. Here's one of the ads run against Huelskamp, who has represented the Kansas 1st District of Western Kansas for the past 6 years.
I'm Tim Huelskamp. I will never forget who I am or where I'm from.
But Huelskamp went Washington, voting against the Farm Bill and opposing crop insurance. Then Huelskamp was kicked off the Agriculture Committee.
This is the first time in 150 years Kansas is not on the Ag Committee,
leaving us without a voice. We can't trust Washing Tim, and it's time for him to go.
So what happened there? This is rare.
Very rare. First time in 70 years we've seen an incumbent lose a primary out in western Kansas, Nick. You know, I guess it's sort of there's a morality tale here. Voters appreciate people who want to go to Washington and shake things up. But if you shake things up too much, look out. And that's what happened to Tim Huelskamp. He got sideways with House leadership, got booted off the House Ag Committee. That's a seat that western Kansas members of Congress have owned forever. Those members are always on the Ag Committee, and that didn't sit very well with the constituents out there.
So are there lessons then, based on what Steve is saying, for other elected officials in our region as a result of what happened to Tim Huelskamp in western Kansas?
Yes, and the lesson is it's more important that what happens in Garden City, Kansas than what happens on Fox News. And Tim Huelskamp bet his entire congressional career on being a favorite for Fox News and to address the conservative wing of the party. Farmers in western Kansas are extraordinarily smart, Nick. They know that their livelihoods depend to some degree on federal help, but they also know to get that federal help, they have to give something. Maybe it's food stamps, maybe it's disaster relief for other communities that face hurricanes or winter storms. Huelskamp's bet was, we'll just protect the farm community, but we won't spend money on these other things. It blew up in his face. He got kicked off of Ag. He voted against the Farm Bill, which is extraordinarily important in western Kansas, and hoped that his Fox News persona would save him. It did not.
Some people say, watch out Kevin Yoder. In fact, Yael Abahalka, your colleague at the Star, suggested that. But Steve Ockrott, is Kevin Yoder in trouble? I mean, he does face a Democratic opponent in the fall election, Jay Seide.
My sense is that Seide can give him a pretty decent run for his money, but I don't know if he's in the same boat in terms of being as vulnerable as Tim Huelskamp was over the last year.
He's the man who has prosecuted 2 cop killers in Wyandotte County. His face is always in the news. So what on earth happened to Wyandotte County District Attorney Jerome Gorman, ousted Tuesday by a criminal defense attorney and preacher by the name of Mark Dupree? And because no Republican filed for the office, Dupree will now be the new district attorney in Wyandotte County. Why were people so dissatisfied with Jerome Gorman, Eric?
I don't think they were dissatisfied. I think that Dupree just out-hustled him. I think that he took it for granted that he's got these high-profile cases, people like him, that he was a shoo-in. But this was definitely an upset. Dupree was out early. He was out campaigning. He was doing everything that he needed to do to win. And I think Gorman just took it for granted that people would put him back in there.
Steve, you've been looking at this.
Right. I think one dynamic that's relevant to this is Gorman never faced a competitive race. And in fact, this office in Wyandotte County has not faced a competitive election for as far back as I could find, looking back into election records going back 30 years or more. Nick Tomasic had the seat for a long time. Nobody ever campaigned against him. When Tomasic retired, Gorman slid in. part of it, I imagine, is I don't know how sophisticated Gorman's re-election campaign was because he's never had to do it before.
Now, you can't say this was a throw the bums out kind of election because in Jackson County, Sheriff Mike Sharp coasts to re-election despite an opponent, a former small-town police chief who claimed he was no longer even fit for the job, Eric.
Yes, and he went public with a lot of things, I think some sexual harassment things that had come up. And I think he was just too much too late. And people like Mike Sharp. He's a likable person, got a good personality. There are some things that probably need to be done different in the Sheriff's Department. A lot of that equipment they have out there that you can see on 291, the Hummers, it looks like they're getting ready for war out there. I think he probably needs to find a better use or hide it so the taxpayers don't see all of that equipment out there that never moves.
Now, as we're talking about law enforcement elections, we should also point out that Johnson County voters were picking a new sheriff to replace a retiring Frank Denning. Republican Calvin Hayden will now be that next sheriff. He won the Republican primary and no Democrats filed for the office. In the race for the highest-ranking law enforcement official in Missouri, it wasn't even close. MU law professor Josh Hawley claimed the Republican nomination for Missouri Attorney General over State Senator Kurt Schaefer. Hawley winning by nearly 30 percentage points? How do you account for such a lopsided result, Steve?
You know, nobody saw that coming. Kurt Schaefer, an entrenched politician in Jeff City, chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, sort of ran a kamikaze campaign. Lots of sort of wild accusations leveled against Josh Hawley. He was representing, terrorists and this kind of thing. That tactic clearly didn't work. Hawley's a little bit more subdued campaign, maybe a little more in the mold of how people view attorneys general. That seemed to work.
But some people were condemning Josh Hawley because there were ads coming in claiming that Kurt Schaefer was was allowing the Chinese to come in and steal Missouri farms, and people were viewing that as racist.
Sure.
Steve.
So yeah, it was a notoriously ugly campaign. But let's look at what Kurt Schaefer spent the last year doing. He was arguing in favor of repealing the earnings tax in both St. Louis and Kansas City. And if you look at how those elections results went, his view was not persuasive by any means. And he picked a fight more or less with the University of Missouri, which, that institution has its issues, but I think the public probably saw his meddling in their affairs as probably another bridge too far.
But the most important dynamic in that race, I think, Nick, is, and we've talked about it all this morning, is Josh Hawley has no record. He's never held public office. That's enormously compelling for Republican primary voters. Eric Greitens never been in office. Josh Hawley never been in office. Roger Marshall in Kansas never been in office. All the Republicans, most of the Republicans who won primaries in Kansas this year, never been in public office. The worst thing you can put next to your name if you're a Republican primary candidate is I for incumbent. And so I think that was a huge part of the dynamic there, and will be, by the way, a huge part of the race against Teresa Hensley in the fall.
And
One other
thing he did, I beat Obama, code word. I beat Obama in court, and I've done this. And then he brought in another commercial with his wife and the baby, and the wife is in the background. Oh yeah, he beat Obama.
Yeah, it was involving the Hobby Lobby.
In the Hobby Lobby, but that was a writ of certiorari, and he was just part of the team.
Right.
And he was way down the list of being a part of the team.
As Dave just mentioned, Hawley now faces Teresa Hensley, the former Cass County prosecutor who defeated Jake Zimmerman to win the Democratic nomination. Is this a lopsided matchup, or are these two candidates evenly matched?
I think, Teresa Hensley will make much of her prosecutorial experience, which Josh Hawley lacks. In a general election, that might make more sense. Missouri has shown some propensity to vote for Democrats for Attorney General. Jay Nixon, of course, followed by Chris Koster. So I think it's a fairly even match. And a lot of it will depend, Nick, on the whole environment this year. Donald Trump, Eric Greitens, Josh Hawley, how does that all, Roy Blunt against Jason Kander, how does that all sort of mix together, or will the races become separate and voters taking a look at
But using
them
Dave
separately?
Helling's logic, Steve, Teresa Hensley's at a disadvantage because she's held elected office before.
Well, yeah, what logic does Dave Helling ever use?
Okay.
No, exactly right, but she's very close to Claire McCaskill. Claire McCaskill will be an ally. I think Dave has sized it up pretty well. It'll be a very close race.
But it's going to depend on who's at the top of the Democratic ticket and if they're settled, if they separate them. Because even though this is the first time you're voting for a woman for president, it doesn't have that same drive alive as it would voting for the first African-American president.
Let me just say this very briefly. It used to be, when Missouri was competitive on the presidential level, that you would have a combined campaign with Democrats where they would all sort of coordinate their effort. Missouri is not likely to be competitive on the presidential level. That will leave people like Teresa Hensley and other Democratic candidates a bit on their own this year to raise money, run their own campaigns. We'll see how that turns out.
Could there be another Ashcroft in statewide office in Missouri, the son of former governor, senator, U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft won the Republican nomination Tuesday for Secretary of State, defeating Lee Summit State Senator Will Kraus. Kraus positioned himself as a military man, just like Eric Greitens did. So why in an anti-incumbent year did voters favor someone from a political dynasty, Jay Ashcroft?
You know, I think you go down ballot in these seats that people don't pay a lot of attention to, Nick. And when you have a last name in Missouri like Ashcroft, his father, one of the most formidable politicians, one of the most successful politicians in the history of the state, that carried a whole lot of water for Mr. Ashcroft.
I thought everybody loved military people too. When you saw Will Kraus in his uniform there, and people like that, don't they?
I wrote a story about this about a year and a half ago. It's a mixed blessing. You know, we'll see that in Jason Kander against Roy Blunt. It can help in some circumstances, it doesn't in others. Will Kraus's problem is nobody knew who he was, even in this area where he's from. He was kind of an unfamiliar name going against Ashcroft, a very difficult man.
Now, speaking of political dynasties, Russ Carnahan, the son of former Democratic governor of Missouri, Mel Carnahan, will now take on Republican State Senator Mike Parson. They were the two-party victors in the race for Missouri Lieutenant Governor. Meanwhile, in the campaign for State Treasurer, former Columbia lawmaker Judy Baker, a Democrat, will square off this fall against St. Louis area Senator Eric Schmitt. Any lessons from these two races?
Yeah, there is a lesson there, Nick, and it's something that I think we need to sort of talk about. The candidates who lost these races, Beth Randles for Lieutenant Governor on the Republican side, an African-American, Pat Contreras, and Hispanic, lost in his race to Judy Baker. You know, the question still sort of hovers over Missouri politics. Can folks of color win statewide? We have seen a Secretary of State candidate now, an African-American woman, win the nomination. That's a first. But can they win statewide? We don't know that yet. Right. That's still a tough road to hoe, I think, for politicians of color in a state like Missouri.
You mentioned Robin Smith earlier, who's a former news anchor at a St. Louis television station, who won the nomination for the Democratic Party for Secretary of State, African-American.
Right, and I think she'll win. I think she'll be the first one for a number of reasons. She connects well. The eastern side of the state knows her. She's got recognition. People know her, trust her, and believe in her. And one of the things that Claire said several years ago was she would be the first woman to be elected statewide. So she's got that support, and I think that this will be the first time that this will happen.
Okay, a round-robin look at some of the other news of the week, certainly election-related to begin with. Clay Chastain, it's apparent, isn't the only person allowed to collect petition signatures in this town. Outraged over tax giveaways to developers, a group of activist organizations say they can no longer stand by. They've begun collecting signatures this week to place on the ballot new limits on incentives. The group is called the Coalition for Kansas City Economic Development Reform. What do they want, Steve Ockrott?
Well, we won't have enough time to discuss the precise mechanics of what they're trying to do because there's a little bit of complexity involved to it. But it's safe to say, in sum, that they want to limit how much money these tax incentive programs can redirect to developers. And they're doing it because they think that the city council and the mayor's office has not acted fast enough or far enough in curtailing the use of these incentives, which there's a large segment of the population that thinks it's used too often, too lavishly.
Now, is this a plan for the November ballot?
Well, they tell me that they'd like to get on the November ballot. They just started collecting signatures last week. They have till the end of August to get 1,700 signatures, which is doable. If they can't, they will proceed and try to get on the April ballot, which is going to be a little bit of the pickle for the city because they want to get the voters to approve an enormous bond issuance for public infrastructure projects.
Okay, we'll continue to monitor that. If there are groups saying enough is enough on tax breaks in Kansas City, in Johnson County, they're saying enough is enough on trash. 2 weeks ago, We reported on big delays on garbage removal. Now the city of Prairie Village is taking matters into their own hands. They're firing Deffenbaugh, which has been providing trash pickup for a decade and a half, and hiring a different company, even though the move will cost homeowners more money. They say the most important service of government is removing snow from roads and picking up the trash. Is this the kind of issue that topples elected leaders, Dave Helling?
It can be. It's not clear that this will happen in Prairie Village, but the people expect certain things from their government, even though, by the way, this is private service. It isn't government like it is in Kansas City, where the city picks up trash, at least in part of the city. So yeah, it's an enormously important issue, and it's very visible, and it's something that people will call their councilman or councilwoman or mayor about to try and get the trash picked up. So I think that's why Prairie Village moved quickly, and why Deffenbaugh needs to pick up the pace a little bit, or it might lose business all across Johnson County.
And just to note, in my neighborhood in Westwood, yard waste is supposed to be picked up on Wednesday. It hasn't been for a few weeks, and everyone's grumbling about it. It's absolutely one of those issues that if you can't get this squared away, it drives members of the public crazy, Nick.
By the way, they are not garbage collectors anymore. The new name is waste management specialists. Do we need to upgrade the name of our often maligned Kemper Arena too? According to a story in the Star this week, Kemper is about to get a name change to Mosaic Arena. I thought that no agreement had been made yet on the future of Kemper, so why the name change, Steve Ockrop?
Well, it's looking more and more like Steve Fouch's plan to turn Kemper Arena into a youth, adult, amateur sports facility is probably moving in the right direction. So if you're trying to rebrand and redevelop a project, it probably makes sense to give it a new name so people don't associate it with what it was.
Okay. Mosaic Arena, it has got a nice ring to it, Steve?
It's going to take a while for Kansas Cityans to get used to it, Nick, because people are so used to Kemper Arena for so many decades in this town.
Eric, nice ring to it for you?
Yeah, nice ring to it, but it'll always be Kemper Arena.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care how he brands it. People will say, Mosaic, where's that
Where's
at?
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's Kemper
That's
Arena.
why we have smartphones.
Alrighty, and that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers. You can hear him weekday mornings at 11 on KCUR-FM, Steve Kraske, and from the Call newspaper, senior writer Eric Wesson. From your Kansas City Stars, Steve Ockrott, thank you so much for being with us, and Dave Helling from the Star. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.